Hey, get excited. So glad you could join us here on our On the Clock Eagles mock draft special powered by Pointsbet. Hey, you are getting the full gamut of these experts and analyzing all 32 picks of the first round, particularly your Philadelphia Eagles with 2 selections in the first round. Let's dive into it. We got all of the guys here. Ray Didinger, although he will be actually in person and not on a cutout. And of course, we have Reuben Frank in the cut as always, and not in the cut as cut out, but we have Reuben Frank. And then I'll bring these 2 guys out together. It is Barrett Brooks and Dave Zangaro. Each of them couldn't have looked finer, right? So, guys, let's make these picks. We're going to start with our order as I presented them as Ray, Rube, Barrett, and Dave. So, Ray, you are on the clock with the first overall selection. I think this is the way we did it last year. But, Ray, the Jacksonville Jaguars on the clock. Doug Peterson picks who with the first overall pick, Ray?
Putting my Doug Peterson hat on right now. This is actually a pretty easy call, I think, even though everybody said how many great edge rushers there are in this draft. And there are a bunch of them. I still think the best of them is Aiden Hutchinson from the University of Michigan. He's been played in a lot of big games this year. People had an opportunity to see him play at Michigan. And to me, he reminds me, I've referred to him a few other times. To me, he looks like the third Watt brother. You know, I mean, he looks that way. He plays that way. He's the kind of difference-making pass rusher that every team is looking for. And to me, he's the first guy off the board.
All right, Aiden Hutchinson is gone. Number 2 is the Lions, and that is Reuben Frank. Where do you think the Lions are going, Rube?
You know, Kyle Hamilton's a guy who I keep trying to think of a reason he won't go super early. I just think he's too good. You don't see a lot of safeties going at number 2, but he not only has all the physical tools, and he's fast and he's strong and he's tough and he's powerful and he can run. He's got all that going for him, but he's an incredibly smart player, instinctive player. So he knows how to get the most out of those traits. He's not just, a combine warrior. He's an elite athlete, but also an elite mind, great football mind. Kind of that jack of all trades, a guy who can play center field. He can play in the box. He can cover. He can do it all. He's a really special player. And I got the Lions going Kyle Hamilton, safety Notre Dame.
Yeah, great pick. Tough to go wrong here at the top of the draft. We've seen plenty of mistakes there, but 2 very solid picks to start. Pick number 3, Barrett, we're coming your way. Who do the Texans pick?
You know, I think they go with, it's supposed to be the number 1 pick in this draft, during the season. But I think it's Kayvon Thibodeau, edge rusher from Oregon. You talk about a guy that's 6'4", 255, 260 pounds. He might be one of the best athletes in this draft. He's a lead in the aspect that he's one of the, guys that can rush the pass from the outside, great ankle bend, everything you want from a pass rusher. And, I think, he dropped down to number 3 simply because he didn't play enough this season to really show everything that he had. But he showed me enough that they could pick him up at number 3 in the Texans and have somebody that can rush the passer, they can build that defense around.
Barrett's been doing a great job with his Barrett tones and leading us up to the draft and analyzing all these prospects. And we'll move to number 4 now. Dave, we appreciate your patience. The Jets have to have shown a lot of patience with the losing that they've endured. Who do they select here to try to help get them to right their ship?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a defensive pick. Robert Saleh needs more on that side of the football. I thought about a cornerback, but ultimately I went with Trayvon Walker from Georgia. I haven't been quiet about how much I like him as a prospect, and maybe he's a little raw, but the athleticism and the upside here just blow you away. He's 6'5", 272, ran a 4.51 as an edge player. I mean, at the Georgia Pro Day, he was dropping in the coverage, showing off that he can play linebacker too. Now, they're not going to ask him to drop into coverage with the Jets, but he's going to get after the passer, and the upside here is huge. You think about him next to Quinnen Williams, opposite Carl Lawson. To me, it's a maybe there's a little bit of a bust factor here you got to worry about, but the boom is so great. I mean, the potential here for Trayvon Walker to be an elite player and, you know, maybe one of the best athletes we've ever seen coming through the pre-draft process. I have him at number 4 to the Jets.
Yeah, a lot of difference-making players on that Georgia team that could go in this first round, the first one off the board. And speaking of first, our first selection coming from the NFC East, we come back to Ray Didinger with the Giants making a selection. Who do you think they take, Ray?
Well, you're seeing the way this draft is trending, and it's sort of consistent with everything that everybody has said about this draft, is there are so many really good defensive linemen, particularly so many really good edge rushers. Somebody's got to block them, right? You better start bringing in some offensive linemen to block these guys, and that's where I'm going to go here. I'm going to go offensive line here. I'm going to go Akeem Ekwonu, who's an offensive tackle. To me, he's the best offensive lineman in this draft. I think he's an immediate starter, 6'4", 320 pounds, very athletic. Tough, mean, aggressive. He's kind of got that personality and the temperament that coaches really like. He's not one of those passive offensive linemen. He's a get after it, sort of physical, aggressive offensive lineman. Sometimes I think he actually a little too aggressive, but a guy who has a world of physical talent, and I think he's going to come to the NFC East and be a day one starter for the Giants.
All right, well, we have a selection of our first offensive lineman. Could this start a run on offensive linemen as we've seen in past drafts? Rue, we're coming your way with Matt Rule's selection from the Panthers, and it seems like you are echoing maybe a little bit of that sentiment of a run on O lineman.
Yeah, I think it's got to be at least 3 to be a run, right? Isn't that the
Okay.
rule? I think that's the competition.
Well, you're with number 2, so maybe there's
number
a third
2.
one.
Charles Cross, another big lineman. A guy who played at the highest level, powerful guy, just a really solid prospect. I think he's a guy who can run block, he can pass block. The Panthers certainly need a lot of help protecting their quarterback, and I think he's a good fit there. I think if it was Ekwonu or Cross, I'd probably go Ekwonu as well, but Cross is pretty close. I think he's the pick right there at number 6.
Interesting selection. Barrett, we're coming back your way with the Giants selection, and you're grabbing a guy who I know you had in the past hoped that the Eagles might have a shot at, but where do you think they go here with this pick?
You know what? They get back to defense, so it's not going to be a run. They got to go back to defensive line. Edge rusher, Jermaine Johnson. We're talking about a guy 6'5", 260 pounds. Started off at Georgia, just couldn't get enough burn there. Had to go to Florida State because of Walker and those guys were so good. But he just set everything and set the precedence on that defense with Florida State. He has great pass rushing moves, great ankle bend. He's going to be a difference maker for this Giants team. They're going to have to make sure, the Eagles are going to have to make sure that they block this guy consistently, because he will definitely wreak havoc at 6'5", 260 pounds. He's probably, one of the top 3, top 4 defensive end pass rushers in this draft.
All right, let's go to you, Dave. And it's interesting. The Falcons have this offseason where they are maybe retooling a bit, but you see them kind of going with this darling that has really charged up the boards for a lot of people.
Yeah, let's have some fun here. No quarterbacks yet. Let's change it. Malik Willis, number 8 to the Falcons. We saw what Atlanta tried to do this offseason. They really made a big move to try to get Deshaun Watson, and it didn't work out. And in the process, they traded away Matt Ryan. So now they're left with Marcus Mariota as their quarterback, and Mariota's all right. They can start him this year, and they might need to if they draft Malik Willis. But why not take a splash for a quarterback that we know has a ton of upside, and maybe it'll take him a while to get there, but he can sit for a few games behind Marcus Mariota. I think they'd be okay with that. And you have who a lot of people think is the best quarterback prospect in this draft and the first one off the board. So Malik Willis to the Falcons at 8.
Ray, we're coming back your way. The Seahawks are on the clock, and you see them going defense.
Yeah, I do. The Seahawks pass defense last year was really poor. I mean, they were 31st in the league defending against the pass. They got to get – I think their team kind of – with the trade of Russell Wilson, they're kind of entering a rebuild, and they need quality players. And I think they start rebuilding the defense. And I'm going to go for the guy that I think is the best defensive back. You can get a pretty good debate going who the best defensive back is at the corner position. Some people like Derek Stingley. I have some questions about his injury history. I'm going to go for Ahmad Sauce Gardner, cornerback from Cincinnati. Saw him play a little bit this year. They got to the Final Four. Guy's got great size. He's 6'3". He's got tremendous length. He didn't give up a touchdown pass his whole college career. I think he's another guy that comes in and starts from day one. So I'm going Sauce Gardner to the Seahawks at number 9.
Well, we know he thinks he's the best cornerback, if not the best player in the draft. Not lacking for confidence is Sauce Gardner. But here we go. 8 picks before the first cornerback is taken off the board. But we're here with the 10th selection coming your way, Rube, and you think the Jets double down. If we are looking at their previous selection, the Jets are here doubling down on the offensive line.
Yeah, and you look at Joe Douglas, and he's a guy that has always believed in building from the inside out. He shares, he comes from the Ozzie Newsome school, and I think when you look at the Jets, that's the first thing they got to do is build those 2 lines up. And so Evan Neal is a guy who, I think there's a lot of corners there. I mean, when you look at this part of the draft, and I think you could see kind of a run of corners coming. I mean, with Stingley and McDuffie are out there, Booth is out there. There's some really good players. But, you got to get in the mind of Joe Douglas. And he loves SEC linemen, and I think that's the way he goes here.
The Jets doubling down on the trenches as they take Trayvon Walker with their previous selection, according to Dave. Where do the newest, oldest team in the league, the Commanders, go, Barrett, with this 11th pick?
I think they go with Derek Stingley out of LSU. We're talking about a cornerback for the first 2 years in college, was one of the best cornerbacks, if not the best cornerback in the SEC. Has perfect range, size, ran a 4.3 at his pro day. Dealt with some injuries last year and the year before. And, even when he did play last year, even though he had the garnered number 7, which, every LSU defensive player wants to wear, is that number 7 or player period, because that's number 7 is like the vaunted jersey number, that the highest of the high in that organization you can get is number 7. So he wore number 7, but he seemed a little disinterested this year just because he was trying to make it to that next level. He saw Jamar Chase sit out 1 year. He feels though he could have left as a junior. He would have, as a sophomore, he would have, but he had, he did just enough to show me in his first 2 years and, some flashes this year that he is one of the top cornerbacks in this draft. So Derek Stingley goes to the Washington Commanders.
Mr. Zangaro, coming back your way, and the Vikings are on the clock. You see them going with someone on the defensive side?
I do, and I look at the Vikings. They need edge rush help, and they need a cornerback, and the top edge rushers are off the board. There's still some good corners. I have them going with Trent McDuffie from Washington, and it's a tough pick for me because he's 5'11", sub 30-inch arms, and that stuff does matter, especially when you're talking about a boundary corner. But the rest of it's there for McDuffie, and I think he's going to be a very high-round pick. There are a couple options here, but I think ultimately the Vikings, they have Patrick Peterson they brought back. They have Cam Dantzler on the other side. But McDuffie's a guy who can come in, and I think he can start pretty quickly once they draft.
Well, Ray, the Texans are on the clock, and we're coming your way. And I think, as Rube corrected me earlier, we have a run on cornerbacks here with your selection at number 13.
Yeah, I'm going cornerback too. Rube made the point that there are really good corners in this draft, and there are. I mean, we've spent a lot of time talking about the positions that are strong and deep. Edge rusher for sure. They're good offensive linemen, good wide receivers. We haven't hit that area yet. But they're also really good corners, and I'm going to make it 3 in a row right here. Texans need to rebuild that defense. They need much better play in the secondary. And Andrew Booth, a cornerback from Clemson, is a player I really like. Can cover, got a really solid frame, 6 feet, 195 pounds. And to me, he's the most aggressive and physical of these cornerbacks. They're not shy about coming up and playing the run. So I think he's a guy that can come in and really, really give that Houston defense a boost. So I'm going Andrew Booth from Clemson.
We're 2 picks away from the Eagles selection. We're here at 14 with the Ravens on the clock. And Rube, this selection, honestly, I don't know if there's a player more tailor-made for the type of tenacity that this Ravens defense likes to play with a space eater like this next selection.
Yeah, Jordan Davis, you look at that Georgia defense, and I mean, they got studs up and down that defense, but Jordan Davis is just a monster. And yeah, that's the way the Ravens used to play defense, and they've gotten away from it a little bit, since the Ray Lewis and Ed Reed era. But I mean, when you see that kid run that 40 in 4.78 at 340 pounds, what a freak. I mean, that should be impossible. I don't know how that's even possible, but it's not just the speed. I mean, he's such a dominant force against the run. He's not going to give you a whole lot getting to the quarterback. He'll get some sacks just from strength and power and determination and grit. He'll get there a little bit. But as a run stuffer at 6'6", 340, powerful, fast, athletic, quick, great feet. He's a beast. I don't know if he's really going to drop this far to 14. If he does, I'd expect Howie to be working the phones to maybe try to move up a couple spots and snag him. But if he's there at 14, it's really tough to let him go. So he's my pick for the Ravens.
That's a good point, Rube. And I'm going to kind of preface the next selection from Barrett with that. Barrett, you're making the Eagles pick. Based on the selections that were in front of you, there was a run on cornerbacks. Jordan Davis is off the clock. How did that affect the selection you made for the Birds here at 15?
You look at Jordan Davis, he could have been perfect in anybody's defense, but, him wearing, the Eagle green, I would have loved that. But since you can go in that direction, I got to go on the wide receivers. I got to go with a wide receiver, go on the opposite side of the ball, and go with a big, one of the bigger wide receivers in this draft at 6'4", 220, 222 pounds. I'm going to go with Drake London, wide receiver from USC. Now, we're talking about a guy with a huge catch radius, fast, big, strong. Even though he got a lot of garbage yards because, USC were down a lot, this season, he's still the type of receiver that they need. Somebody that's big, has a huge catch radius, be more forgiving for Jalen Hurts when he's throwing the ball. And also, he's a guy that can go block. He's going to have to go block in the run-oriented offense that they run. So I'm going with the Eagles, going with their first pick, Drake London, wide receiver out of USC.
Okay, so we promised that we would go around the horn with this selection. Another wide receiver for Howie Roseman in the draft. How likely do you guys think that will happen, that he picks another wide receiver in consecutive drafts like this?
I think it is likely. And, you can't not take a receiver just because you messed up 2 years ago. You can't say, well,
right.
You can't play that game. You got to take the guy that's going to help you the most. And, there's nothing you can do about Rager. It happened, but you can't let one of these guys go just because of that. The Lions drafted 3 in a row not too long ago. It's something you have to do. And in the way this league is, they spent the whole offseason saying we got to get Jalen weapons, and here's an opportunity to do it. So I'm all for it.
What are you thinking, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Barrett's notion here that, especially without a receiver going before this, which let's be honest, I think that's probably unlikely. This is a decent receiver class. I'll be honest, London's not my favorite of this group. There are other players who I kind of like more, but if the Eagles are really prioritizing getting a big-bodied complement for Devontae Smith, then Drake London's the guy. Me personally, I kind of like Garrett Wilson better overall as just an overall player. I think Jamison Williams from Alabama would give them a nice deep threat that they haven't had. But overall, I get what Barrett's doing here, and having a chance to take your pick of the receivers at 15 would be a pretty good spot to be in.
I think that if the draft really did play out the way we have it here so far, if I were Howie and I was sitting there at 15, I'd think about trading up. I mean, I don't know that we're allowed to do that in this draft, but that's what I would probably do. I mean, if Jordan Davis really got this close, I would take 15 and maybe put in a third-round pick and make a trade to try and get up and get Jordan Davis. I think he's a difference-making player. I mean, you're at a point now where Fletcher Cox is probably a one-year guy right now. But I think Davis can come in and be everything that Fletcher Cox was, but in a younger version. And Rube was talking about the fact he's a run stuffer. Boy, he absolutely is that. But he's a better interior pass rusher than people think. I mean, because he's a 4'8" guy and because he has good technique, he can get pressure on the quarterback, and he certainly can collapse the pocket and make it easier for the edge rushers to get to the quarterback. So if the draft really played out this way, and I was Howie at 15, I don't think I'd stay at 15. If Jordan Davis got that close, I would try to make the trade to get up to get him, because I agree with everybody about the Eagles needing another wide receiver, but I feel pretty good about getting a wide receiver at 18. I mean, I think I could probably get Garrett Wilson at 18 and come away with Davis and Wilson. I'd feel pretty good about that.
That's how we doing Howie things too, right? So
Oh, sure. Yeah, and I think, I don't know how the rest of you guys feel, but even though he's already made the one trade out of the first round to get another first rounder next year, which, by the way, I thought was pretty shrewd on his part. I thought it was pretty good. Some people think he's done. I will never assume that Howie's done with the draft. I to be honest with you, I'd be surprised if he was picking at 15 and 18. I think he's going to do something.
Do you guys agree that whatever this selection is at 15, whether it be offense or defense, it should be vice versa for the 18th selection?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think it would be offense.
Both offense or both defense in the first round, you guys wouldn't feel like that was a mistake?
Well, it depends on what it is. I think both defense makes a lot of sense. If they leave with, I think 2 defensive linemen is probably a bit much, but if they leave with a corner and a lineman, I don't think anyone would have any real issues with that. I don't know about 2 offensive players. That would mean that they're taking a lineman, and I don't know if the value necessarily lines up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as long as it's not 2 tight ends. I mean, I think a D lineman and a corner, I'd be fine with that. I mean, because and then you can still get a receiver and early in there's some good second round receivers too who could really help this team. So I'd have no problem going D line corner in the first round I'm with Ray. I think there's a really good chance he's gonna try to move up into that 10 to 12 area and get somebody there who might not be there at 15.
The Birds are definitely strategically placed around the Saints, who also need a wide receiver. So as we move on here to pick 16, Dave, you don't think they go that way? Is that because of who the Eagles selected, or just simply something different? You're not a tasting.
No, I mean, yeah, they need a quarterback. And when they made the trade with the Eagles, my first thought was, well, maybe they're not done. Maybe they're going to package up some more picks and continue moving up the board here a little bit. But they don't need to. Kenny Pickett falls to them at 16. And look, maybe he doesn't have the elite athleticism that Malik Willis has. And by the way, I'm the only one picking quarterbacks here. But
your quarterback, Dave.
Pickett is a safe pick. I think he probably has the highest floor of these guys. He's going to step in and play. Jameis Winston's not the long-term answer in New Orleans. He might be a decent stopgap option, but they need a real quarterback down there if they're ever going to get back to the level of success they had in the last decade. So I think it makes a lot of sense for them to take Kenny Pickett here.
We are halfway through this thing, and the Chargers are on the clock, Ray. And are you looking at them as needing some defensive help most of all? Is that why you made this selection?
Yeah, their run defense was really poor last year. That was one of the things. If teams wanted to come out and run the ball on the Chargers, they could run the ball on the Chargers last year, and I think they really have to address that. They got a good offense and they have a really good quarterback, but they need to get better on the defensive line. And this Devontae Wyatt is a player I was actually thinking of for the Eagles too. I think that he would fit very nicely with the Eagles. He's another one of those Georgia defensive players who were so good this year. Might have been the best college defense I ever saw, top to bottom. They were that good, and this guy was a big part of it. Kind of a late bloomer, came on, had his best year this year. They played him inside at Georgia, but I think he's got a little bit of flexibility that he could play outside if you wanted him to. Good, versatile player, smart, tough. I think he would fit in anybody's scheme right now, but given the way the Chargers, I think, have to really shore up that defense, I think Devontae Wyatt from Georgia is the pick right here.
Georgia Bulldogs are toast of the draft so far, the third player that has been selected from that side of the football. We are now reached the Eagles selection, and once again, interesting that, Rube, you're going to defy history and have a selection here with the Eagles picking someone as a linebacker here with this selection, huh?
Yeah, and I think when you have the picks that the Eagles have, and it's the first time since 1973 they've had 2 top 20 picks. They took Charlie Young and Jerry Sizemore 3 and 6, or Jerry and Charlie Young 3 and 6, both really good players, both multiple Pro Bowlers. When you have these picks, 5 of the first 101 picks, I think you have a little little more chance to do things you wouldn't normally do, like take a receiver for the third straight year or take a linebacker for the first time since Jerry Robinson in '79. Yeah, they've come close. I think Barry Gardner was a 35th pick, so he was a really early second-round pick. So he was close. But when I look at Devin Lloyd and watch him play, I don't care about that 1979 Jerry Robinson thing. This guy is so good. He would be such a good fit on this team. Sideline to sideline athleticism, ferocious getting to the ball carrier. Really fun player to watch and versatile. And really came a long way this past year as far as being able to cover and kind of made himself into a three-down linebacker. Sacks, forced fumbles, interceptions. He's all over the field. I would love to see him in the Eagles uniform. And, at some point, one day they're going to take a linebacker in the first round. Let's make it this month.
They did pick up Kaiser White in free agency. How would you see Lloyd fitting in with him in the scheme?
Play the 11 best guys. I mean, he's here on a one-year deal, and signing a guy to a one-year deal is going to have no bearing on the way I draft. Whether it's Zach Pascal or whoever, your one-year deal. And maybe he'll be here longer, but you can't tailor your draft to who you just signed to a one-year deal. You take the best guy who's going to help you win games over the next 5 years and maybe more. And to me, that's Devin Lloyd. You bring him in here and you let it all sort out, because your White's on a low, very low salary. And, you find where everybody fits in the best and you play them out. There's one thing I didn't think we'd be talking about was, do they have too many linebackers? Is there too much talent?
Right.
That's what it's come to. But it's a good problem to have. And I think Kaiser White's a good player. I think if I'm Jonathan Gannon, I wouldn't mind having both of them.
That's a great pick, man. I love it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's been my fantasy for the past 6 years. I've been screaming it, and you guys been telling me all along that'll never happen. It'll never happen. Well, hey, from your mouth to God's ears and to Howie's drafting, let's go get him, because it's got me. You look at what Micah Parsons did. I think he set the precedence on how you use your linebackers these days, especially these young guys coming in. He can play off the ball. He can play on the line of scrimmage as a defensive end / pass rusher. He can play blitzing downs. So to me, he's perfect, man. He can cover. He's a perfect guy to put in the defense and have him grow with this new defensive coordinator in Gannon.
I like that you mentioned Parsons there, because look, no one's going to be Micah Parsons. I don't think they can expect that. But if Devin Lloyd offers them a little bit of pass rush ability, then you can start to convince yourself that maybe they'll take a linebacker, because we know they don't necessarily value the off-ball linebacker position as much. But if they think at times we can blitz him, we can line him up on the edge and let him play in some sub packages and get after the quarterback, they know there's value in that. We know that they care about pass rush. So that's the one angle I take on this, where I'm like, okay, maybe you can kind of talk yourself into thinking the Eagles might actually do this if they look at Devin Lloyd, that particular player, and think he can rush the passer a little bit and help us there too.
Yeah, I don't think Lloyd, he's a good player. I don't think he's Micah Parsons, and if people are trying to make that comparison, because you saw the impact that Parsons had in Dallas last year, Parsons is a lot more powerful. I mean, he's got a lot more pop than Lloyd does. I can't imagine Lloyd is going to be a guy you're going to have with his hand on the ground playing defensive end the way Dallas did with Parsons. This guy is more of a straight up 2-point stance linebacker, but a good one. I agree with you. A month ago, I wouldn't have thought this was really a possibility, that he would still even be floating around at 18. But the fact is, he didn't show well at the combine, really. A lot of people came away a little disappointed. So I think his stock took a little bit of a hit. This is probably right about where I think he's going to go. And he'll certainly be in the Eagles discussion. But I think we all have to temper the idea of possibly comparing him to Parsons, because he's not Micah Parsons.
Wishful thinking, Ray. Wishful thinking.
Well, you can do that. I mean, the Eagles have been doing that for a long time.
Hey, what do you guys think about the Eagles have made their selections here in our mock draft? There's been a lot of criticism about, how he kind of getting out of his own way and making some of these obvious picks as rather than like trusting the board more, or their own evaluation process. Is that less of a concern now? Do you think he's matured more in the way that he picks players?
I personally, I think that I think he listened a little more to Andy Waddell last year, and it kind of showed in the picks that he had. I think Andy's from that old school Ravens type of selection process of draft picks. So I do think that him having a little more say so in how they're approaching it is good for them, and as far as his player analysis, and he's going to give these guys, hey, these are the best position, the guys at these positions, pick from these guys, I mean, we trust in these guys. So hopefully he listens a little bit.
All right, let's move on here. As Barrett, you just spoke and you were on the clock. We mentioned the Eagles being strategically positioned around the Saints, but here you don't see that really playing a factor, and you see them going with someone on the O-line.
Yeah, the Saints lost Teron Armstead, Pro Bowl starting left tackle for years now. They let him sneak away, and he signed a lucrative deal with Miami, with the Dolphins. So I think they go out and pick up, Trevor Penning, 6'7", 340-pound offensive tackle, showed a nasty streak. I was talking to Dave when Dave was down at the Senior Bowl and how well he looked, how aggressive he looked, and he definitely differentiated himself as far as some of the guys that did go to to that game. He was one of the better tackles there. So I think it's a good pick for them to go out and get Trevor Penning. His stock is going up. He showed he can play, and he has a little nasty streak in him. So that's why I'm thinking the Saints will go just to replace their starting left tackle.
Dave, the Steelers need to keep their quarterback of the future upright and not running for his life. You feel like they will try to do that by their selection here with the 20th pick?
I do. And, I almost took a third quarterback personally in this draft, and I thought, no, I can't do it. I can't be the only guy here drafting quarterbacks. So I have them taking Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa, and it's tough to figure out where centers should go and how high they should go in the first round. It kind of goes against conventional wisdom to think they go too high. But I thought about it this way. One of the teams that's really succeeded in recent draft history was the Steelers when they took Marquise Pouncey back in 2010 with the 18th overall pick. And that was Kevin Colbert's first draft as a general manager. This is his final draft. So why not a bookend here? Draft Tyler Linderbaum. You start him at center. You can move Kendrick Green, who they just took recently, out to guard. And I get why you worry about positional value here, but if you can find your center of the future and a guy who's going to start 10 years for you, and I think Linderbaum has that potential, no problem doing it at 20.
Ray, you were on the clock with 21 in the Patriots selection. I feel like we need to get the Ray Charles, Georgia on my mind playing in the background because you're going back to the Bulldogs well again here with this 21st selection.
Yeah, I am. I guess maybe I just watched too much of Georgia this year. I mean, and it was hard not to because they were that good. And their defense, as I said, was maybe the best college defense I ever saw. And so I'm going to go back there again. And to me, this just seems like a real fit. I mean, if Nakobe Dean is still on the board when the Patriots come up, I think Bill Belichick would snap him up in a second. He's a little undersized. I mean, some teams will look at that 5'11" and say he's too small to be a linebacker in the NFL. But I don't think so. He has such tremendous instinct. His ability to find the football and process information on the run. I mean, to me, the linebacker position is really probably the most instinctive position on the field. It's all about your ability to decode what the offense is going to do. And there's nobody in this draft class that even comes close to Nakobe Dean. So I think he's going to be a perfect fit for Bill Belichick. So if he's still on the board here, I think that's an easy call for Bill Belichick, taking Nakobe Dean from Georgia.
Well, if Nakobe Dean is a perfect fit for what the Patriots need, is the Packers' next selection a perfect fit for what they need, considering that they lost the prolific Davante Adams in the offseason?
Yeah, I mean, that's priority 1, 2, and 3, I think, for the Packers. I mean, it's going to take more than one person to replace Davante Adams for Green Bay. It's incredible. Here we are at pick 22, and I believe Drake London's the only receiver that's gone. We spent so much time talking receivers during the lead up to the draft. Barrett took Drake London at 15 for the Eagles, and there's some good receivers out there. Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, different kind of guys. I think Wilson is so pro ready, and he doesn't have that great size. He's fast enough. 4.37 is pretty fast, but he's just such a pro. He runs great routes, very polished, super hands. I wouldn't want him probably opposite Devontae Smith just because they're kind of similar in stature. But for the Packers, a guy who can go down the field and make plays, knows how to get open, and he's a plug and play starter on opening day. So second receiver off the board, that's surprising to me. Garrett Wilson at 22 to the Packers.
Yeah, particularly to a team that throws the ball a ton. So he's going to get a lot of volume for sure. Barrett, we're coming your way with the Cardinals selection, and where do you see them going?
They need some help in the interior of that defensive line. Of course they have Watt there, and he's getting kind of old, and he was if you look at him, he was hurt for the entire season this year. He did come back with a lot of rage and played well from the last game he did play. But at this point, I think they need to go defensive lineman, and I'm going with Minnesota's Boye Mafe. He's going to play that 5 technique defensive end in that 3-4 system. Guy is not really a rush in, but not really a 3 technique. He's in between the two. And, that's how you play the 3-4 system. You have a stand-up defensive end, not a stand-up defense, a defensive end that's head up on that offensive tackle, and he has a play 2 gap. And that's exactly what, Mafe is. He has perfect size at 6'4", 265, 270 pounds. He can hold the edge. He can rush the passer. He can do all those things, and he'd be perfect in that 3-4 system that they want to use.
Here we go, moving on to the 24th selection, and another letdown for the Cowboys in the postseason. And how do they help remedy that with this selection, Dave?
Yeah, this one was pretty straightforward for me. They need a left guard. Connor Williams left in free agency, so right now, if the draft falls this way for the Cowboys, I think they'd feel pretty good about it. There's a couple really good options. I had them going with Zion Johnson from Boston College, played mostly left guard last year. And played really well. He's someone who does offer some versatility. He can play other positions. He can play tackle. I remember at the Senior Bowl, he was even snapping the ball a little bit. But he's a starting guard in the NFL. So they draft him, they plug him and play him, and they just hope that he holds up in his rookie year. I think he will. I think he's a very good player.
Just falls right into the Cowboys' lap there. Ray, the Bills are on the clock with the 25th pick, and you see them going with a lineman as well.
Yeah, I'm going to the guard position too. Their guard play last year was not great. Need to get better in the interior. They're pretty good at the tackles, but they need help inside. And if they have a shot at Kenyon Green, the massive offensive guard from Texas A&M, I just don't think they could pass up on him. He's Johnson, who Dave just sent to Dallas, is a good player. I think Green is a better player. I think he's better now, and I think he has a higher ceiling. Just massive guy, tremendously strong, and a dominant blocker at the point of attack. I think he kind of fits the Buffalo philosophy. So here I'm going to send Kenyon Green to the Buffalo Bills at pick number 25.
With the 26th pick, Rube, if Dave is drafting the quarterbacks, you and those Ohio State wide receivers are right tied together because you like one of them going to the Titans.
Yeah, Chris Carter's the guy here at 26. Chris Olave is another one who's just explosive off the line of scrimmage, knows how to beat press coverage, can get open. Another good route runner. You got to give a lot of credit to Ohio State's receivers coach, Brian Hartline, who played in the league with the Dolphins for about 10 years. He had a couple 1,000-yard seasons and went to Ohio State, actually, and now he's coaching under Ryan Day in Columbus. And they're going to have another top one next year. But Olave is just I'll be shocked if he's there at 26, but I guess somebody's got to drop. I think somebody's going to get a star in him. And you can go back and forth, and there's no real consensus on a bunch of these receivers. You ask 10 people, you get 10 different orders of how the top guys are going to go. But for the Titans, getting Olave at 26, I think is a steal. Great production. Gets in the end zone just like Garrett Wilson does, and he's ready to play.
Barrett, we don't always wait this long in the draft to get a second Michigan player off the board, but here we are, finally a second one being taken for the Buccaneers with the 27th pick.
Yeah, and you look what the Bucs did. They lost their safety, and they went out and got Logan Ryan from the Giants. He played cornerback. Now they want to put him in safety, but I think they're going to try to go out and get Dax Hill, 6 foot, 200 pounds, can run sideline to sideline. He's a guy that's going to be in the box. He's going to be a box safety. He can't play deep, but he's going to be more so that guy that's going to be a thumper. Playing opposite of Winfield Jr., I think it'll be a perfect match for them. It'll help that secondary. They had a lot of problems last year in the secondary, and I think he can come in and play there for a long time. So I think Dax Hill, safety from Michigan, is a great pick for them in that secondary.
Dave, we're coming back to you with the Packers selection at 28. Where do you see them going?
Well, they filled one of their needs. They got a receiver earlier, but they also lost to Darius Smith this offseason. So they can replace him, George Karlaftis from Purdue. He's a guy that is, I think, very much in the mix for when the Eagles are on the clock in the teens. And this is a guy that we were talking about him as a top 10 pick not that long ago. And it's not really like he's done anything to hurt his draft stock. There's a lot to like about him. And my favorite thing is that he's a former water polo player, and his old training exercise was to tread water for 10 minutes and hold a chair above his head. I love that. And he has the work ethic. He's still a little raw because he started playing football late, but I like that pick for them a lot. You can pair him with Preston Smith on the other side, and all of a sudden the Packers are retooled and ready to make a run.
And plus, after watching Ryan Kerrigan last year, you got to feel good about Purdue edge rushers.
Ryan Kerrigan was pretty good for a while.
He was.
We are moving on in the draft. The Chiefs are on the clock. Andy Reid and company, and Ray. I guess they just retool over there because you see them getting someone dynamic to help out that offense.
Yeah, well, he lost Tyreek Hill, and they want to get that deep threat for Patrick Mahomes, and this is going to be a gutsy kind of call because Jamison Williams, world of talent, and he demonstrated at Alabama, but has suffered a really severe knee injury in the national championship game. And there's a question of when he's coming back. I mean, everybody keeps saying that his recovery is going fine and he's rehabbing and everything, but okay, when's he going to be back? Is he going to be back early in the season, middle of the season? Is he going to have to sit it out the entire season? I mean, there's a lot of questions, no questions about his ability and no questions about how well he would fit into the Kansas City offense. But the question is, when's he going to be available to you? But somebody's going to take a shot at him in the first round. He's just too good not to. And the fact that he hasn't gone this far, and the Chiefs are looking for that big playmaker to take Hill's place. So I'm going to send Jamison Williams to Andy Reid here at 29.
The Chiefs got that pick from San Fran through Miami at 29. The 30th pick is their pick, Rube, and they are back-to-back here. And do you see them staying on the offensive side or moving on the defensive side?
They're just going to get all the injured guys and draft them. I think Andy Reid is in a position where they have that luxury of taking a little bit of a risk on a guy like Jamison Williams and David Ojabo, who both are dealing with injury concerns. We all saw that Michigan Pro Day, when he, tore his Achilles. He would have been obviously not there if he hadn't gotten hurt. And, I think it's kind of, you look at the Sidney Jones thing, and he was never the player. I still like the pick. I still thought taking Sidney Jones in the second round was a worthwhile risk. And he's still in the league, and he's a functional player, but not what the Eagles thought in the second round. But with an edge rusher, I don't think an Achilles injury is going to be as much of a long-term issue as with a cornerback who's got to be able to run world-class 40 times to play in this league. So I think if you can get talent like Jamison Williams and David Ojabo, 29 and 30, the end of the first round, who would have both been top 15, maybe top 10 picks if they were healthy. That's an Andy Reid kind of thing to do, a Brett Veach kind of thing to do. They have that luxury where that thing is rolling so well that you can get a guy that maybe isn't going to, need some time to get healthy and become an NFL player. So it's kind of an odd juxtaposition there with the two of them. But I think they know what they're doing, and I think they could get a steal there in the long term.
Hey, we saw Terrell Suggs bounce back from the Achilles late in his career, but maybe that is a prototype for Ajabo to think about. But two more selections here. The Bengals are on the clock. Barrett, the ball is in your court. Who do they go with here, 31 overall?
Well, I think since he goes out and they reassure themselves a chance to play better defense, especially on the defensive line. They already got Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson when they got from New Orleans. It was definitely a great pickup for him last year. So I think they're going to go defensive line again. They're going to go with Logan Hall. Now, a lot of people don't know about Logan, but I'm talking about he was a fierce interior defensive lineman that rushed the passer very, very well. Great fundamentals. And, he has a nasty streak about him. So that's a great pickup by the Bengals. In the interior of that defensive line, gives them a lot more pass rush, defensive tackle from Houston.
Number 32, we have reached the end of the first round. Dave, you are on the clock. The Lions are picking, and they already have Kyle Hamilton in the mix. What do they do here, Dave?
I thought about another quarterback, and then I didn't do it. Desmond Ridder is a guy who was on my mind here, and I think at 32, if you're the Lions and a team calls because they want to get that fifth year of control on a quarterback, kind of like we saw the Eagles do back in, 2018 when the Ravens traded up to draft Lamar Jackson. I think the Lions' phone will be working if a team wants to offer them something. But if not, I have them going wide receiver. I think the value here kind of won me over with Treylon Burks from Arkansas. It's a little scary because he has to go to an offensive coach that really knows what they're doing with him because he does have great size. He's 6'2", 6'3", 220, 225. But he wasn't just that prototypical outside X receiver. He lined up all over the field at Arkansas. So you need, in order to make him what he wants to be, you need an offensive coordinator that really understands how to use him. So there's a little bit of risk there, but the value getting him at 32 was what made me take him there.
Well done, gentlemen. Before we wrap things up, I want to get your perspective on just how this first round went. Any value do you think that some teams seized upon, or your other compadres were able to kind of squeeze out of the draft, or do you feel like there are players who didn't get drafted in the first round that you surprised? What always happens, but snuck into the second?
It's a
we
lot
were late
of guys.
on receivers.
Yeah, very related. I was about to say.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to go earlier than that, I think, in general. I'd be surprised if at 15 was the first receiver. But like Reuben mentioned a while back, it's a weird year that there's not really a consensus of the order. People see this draft class much differently. So I still think that we're going to see earlier receivers than what we had.
And also receivers, only 2 quarterbacks drafted in the first round. I mean, that's almost never happened, and once one quarterback goes, usually a run because, they're like the unicorns, the rarest beasts in the world, they usually go when they go, and then you go back to back when they start going. Just 2 quarterbacks in the first round kind of looks a little weird, but this may be the year that it happens.
And
I think we'll see at least 4 quarterbacks in the first round. I think, once teams get there, they can't help themselves.
Yeah.
And
Right.
2 of them will be busts.
And one way that this draft reflects sort of conventional wisdom in the NFL is there's no running backs. We went through the whole first round here, no running backs went. And that's sort of the way of pro football now. Everybody, they go shopping for their running backs in rounds 2, 3, and 4. And if you look at history, it's hard to argue against that. Teams that draft running backs high, like the New York Giants did with Saquon Barkley, often wind up regretting it. So, and that's not to say there aren't some good running backs in this draft. There are, but teams just figuring up the value with running backs comes later. So we went through this whole first round, picked the first 32 players, not a single running back off the board.
Something I'm curious about, Dave brings up the guy Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati. There have been reports that he was charging up at draft boards because he interviewed well. Do you guys put much stock in those interviews as far as do teams measure that and weigh that too much when it comes to situations like that?
No, I think you have to really take that part of it seriously, or you end up with a guy that really doesn't love playing football. And we've all seen. We can think of examples with this team, Fireman Danny. I mean, he was he was a solid guy. He was a little too old, but he just had no desire to play the game. And I think that's why the interviews have become more and more prevalent, more and more important over the years, because it's not just enough to see if the guy can run and how strong he is and all that stuff. You got to know if he really wants to, like, what's going to happen when he starts getting paid. Is he going to still be as committed to this game as he was when he was in college? You got to find that out. And I think looking a guy in the eye and talking to him is a good way to start that process.
Or shoot free throws, right?
Exactly. Little pop shot.
No, I think Rube's right, and I think it's particularly important at the quarterback position. I think that guy's going to have to be a leader of the team, and he has to project that kind of authority. And the only way you can really get a real feel for that is to actually have some conversation with him. I remember, the year that a bunch of quarterbacks came out, and if you looked at the tape, Josh Rosen was a good college player. If you looked at the tape, you looked at the stats, you'd think here was a guy who come in the NFL and play well. And Josh Allen's in the same class. And guys came away from the interview process with totally different impressions. They came away with the idea that Josh Allen is absolutely 100% committed to being a football player. Loved the game, loved everything about the game. He's a guy that his teammates are going to rally behind him. He's got a lot to learn. He's got to become a more accurate passer. But all those other qualities you want a quarterback to have, he's got them. And Rosen, they said there was none of it. I mean, he has ability, throws a nice ball, but he doesn't have that it factor. And you see where they are now. See where Allen is now and Rosen is now. It was actually sort of borne out.
Yeah, you look at right now. I mean, people are starting to think. At the time, Thibodeau was the number one defensive player, the number one player, period, during the season in the draft. But he's dropping down. He dropped down to number 3. We're talking about a guy that has all the talent in the world, but I think he thinks more about chess than he does about playing the game, and it'll all play out. But those are the type of things you can get in the interview process that can open you up to what he could be later on. So they do take it very, very seriously.
That's why the Eagles aren't going to draft Boris Spassky.
Dave, what was your feel about how players felt about the unorthodox, shooting free throw thing? I know you've talked about it in the past, but I'm curious if that played out as the Eagles or Sirianni had hoped with the potential draft picks.
Yeah, when I was at the Combine, I had a chance to talk to a bunch of the prospects about it, and they actually really liked it. And I know the Eagles always talk about it being a way to gauge competitiveness. Look, I don't know if that's really accurate. If you're really going to figure out how competitive somebody is by shooting free throws, but what it does do is it allows you to kind of loosen them up a little bit. And it helps you forge a connection. And it sounds silly, I get it, but if I walk into an interview and I'm shooting free throws and I'm chopping it up and it has a more relaxed feel, then I'm probably going to be a little more relaxed, and I'm probably going to share a little bit more than I would otherwise. And if that's the only outcome, if that's the only thing that they took from it, then I still think it's valuable. And it always gets blown out of proportion when you hear about it, because it sounds like, what is this Harry High School crap that they're doing? But if it works, go ahead and do it. And if it puts these guys at ease a little bit more, I'm all for it. It makes a ton of sense to me.
I think these players are so coached up how to respond to every situation, how to answer every question. I mean, they prep for the Combine, for the questions, for the interviews. And I think anything you can do to break through that and kind of get to know the players, who they really are, not just the scripted, overly prepped player. I think anytime you can do that, it's an advantage.
Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get these guys together and play a little Rochambeau with these gentlemen. Rock, paper, scissors. We're going to just have it out. But, gentlemen, well done. We appreciate your expertise here on the On the Clock mock draft special, powered by PointsBet. For Barrett Brooks, Dave Zangaro, Reuben Frank, and Ray Didinger, I'm Danny Pommells. We appreciate you watching and listening. We'll see you next time.